my good human. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Luana from luanarose.com. On my channel here, we talk about all things nervous system health, relational health, and healing from trauma. In today's video, I'm answering this question. How do I stop being a victim in my life, my relationships, my work, and really any unexpected twists and turns that happen? I find myself saying, poor me, and it's not fair often, and I want to shift this mindset or way of being. I really appreciate this question because as this person reflected, being with that victimhood mentality and identifying as a victim can really hold us back on our healing journey. And I see a lot of people either get some motion, some momentum, and then they get derailed because of this. So it's really important to address this and talk about it today. So thanks for being here, and make sure you like and comment and subscribe if you haven't already. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. I am so happy you're here. So first of all, I want to acknowledge and empathize with the fact that being a victim is a real thing. From this person's question, it sounds like they're not in a scenario or experience where it's a kind of life or death, highly threatening scenario. It sounds like they're out of it and they're later on in life and figuring out how to move forward in their healing journey. So to acknowledge the fact that there are victims every day of the week. And some people watching this may even resonate with being a victim in the past, experiencing childhood neglect, abuse, physical or emotional. Some folks, were kidnapped, were a victim of being kidnapped or held at gunpoint, or refugees from a war-torn or country of famine. So I want to acknowledge first off that victimhood and being a victim is a very real thing for many people. This video is geared towards the folks that find themselves out of those situations and have more autonomy and choice in their life. We'll address this from three aspects, and the first aspect is cognitively. Our higher brain, our prefrontal cortex, that higher thinking brain that makes us human, can really come on board and actually address, I'm not in that victimizing situation anymore, and I have the autonomy and choice to make new choices in my life and choose the trajectory of where I'm going, who I choose to spend my time with, who I allow in my life, and who I close the door and say no to. So coming from a cognitive, higher thinking standpoint, when we notice those old patterns of woe is me, poor me, it's not fair coming up, we can kind of catch ourselves and have a little self-talk and say, hey, I'm not actually in a situation that was threatening and victimizing anymore. I can cognitively reroute my thinking into autonomy and personal agency. So that's the first one of changing the victim script on life. The second one is our body. How does that experience or those experiences in childhood or past traumatic experiences land in the body? So we can address it structurally, and you can say anatomically, structurally. So generally when there is experiences of being a victim in our history, whether, as I said, it's emotional or physical neglect, abuse, being held at gunpoint, or something like being kidnapped, there will be a physiological stress response that happens, and that's also known as fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So freeze or fawn are the aspects that come to my mind, and those have this quality of collapse. So we'll kind of see a collapse in the chest and shoulders, and there will kind of be like this collapse and hiding. So what we can address anatomically and structurally is when we notice that happening within our physiology, within our experience, we can actually roll our shoulders back and bring our heart more towards the sun. So, those are little things that when we become aware of it, we can anatomically change our posture. There's also many modalities of movement practice that helps changing those structural and anatomical things that may go along with identifying as a victim, such as dance, Pilates, yoga. I think that's why so many people really enjoy those practices, because it gives us an opportunity to feel something different in our body. Even if it is a movement that someone else is instructing us to do through like a yoga flow class, it does feel good in the body to notice something different, and we come out of a class feeling generally most of the time better than when we walked in. So that's why I think most people enjoy that type of movement guidance or class. So that's the second one, is addressing anatomically and structurally that collapse and that caving in that can happen if we've ever experienced being a victim in life. It's a stress response, that freeze or fawn. It's a response to the threat from the past that gets stored in our body. And if you want to know more about that, make sure you check out the other videos on my channel after you watch this video. Which brings us to the third tip, or it's not really a trick, but the third one I have for you today is addressing the stress physiology in order to step out of that victimhood mentality or identification. Our stress physiology is basically how our cells, organs, and whole mobilization of our body reacts and responds subconsciously to threat or to a perceived threat. So, for an example, which is quite a common example, let's say growing up, I had a parent that was volatile and I never really knew what they might do. So, maybe I did something wrong or a behavior that they didn't like, and that person would, or that parent figure would come down with harsh consequences. It could be verbal abuse, it could be physical abuse, it could be neglect, telling the child to go sit in the room and think about what they've done, and they could be there for 20 minutes, an hour, whatever it may be. When that threat of physical, emotional, or relational, the attachment piece is present for a child, and the child can't fight, they can't run away from home because they need food, and sometimes the parent may be nice. They can't fight, they can't flee, they can't run away from home. So then the next one after fight or flee is freeze. The freeze response, and then fawn. So freeze comes in and is a automatic, natural response to threat that we all have. And the freeze is that collapse, that shutdown in our physiology. We experience it as shrinking. The breath will get shorter. It feels like we can't really breathe. Our digestion will turn off eventually, and our higher thinking brain also shuts down. So we experience freeze and fawn. Fawn is, maybe apologizing to that mean parent, even though it wasn't the child's fault. So fawning is basically putting the person in power's needs above their own, and it's a response to stress. It's a way we have learned how to survive, appease, make amends, to just move forward in life. So working with healing the stress physiology, the third one, I recommend working with a trained practitioner who knows how to work with the fight, flight, freeze, fawn response in a gentle and titrated way, so that you don't have to default, or we don't have to default to that stress response when we experience a perceived threat or get stressed in life. And I recommend practitioners that have trained with Kathy Kane from Somatic Practice or Stephen Terrell from Transforming the Experience-Based Brain. Peter Levine's work in somatic experiencing is also helpful. The link between the scenario I just explained, the freeze and fawn response in childhood, and identifying as a victim back then, the fact is that a child that grows up in a scenario like that with a volatile parent in this example, or maybe they're narcissistic or both, a common thing that I see is that as an adult, this person's stress physiology is still running the show. So they may find themselves, these individuals, in relationships or marriages that kind of exemplify what happened in childhood, meaning their physiology responds the same way to a neglectful, emotionally neglectful, or abusive partnership, romantic, or sometimes it can even be at work. And once we heal the stress physiology underneath, it frees up this autonomy to leave a abusive partnership or neglectful, emotionally neglectful partnership, or a work environment that doesn't serve their highest good. So there is a link between what happened in childhood or even earlier on in utero to being an adult. And as this person wrote in, it is, we do have the choice as adults, if we are out of those victimizing situations, we have the choice to choose new thoughts for ourselves. When those poor me or it's not fair thoughts come in, we can choose, hey, that's that old voice of victimhood. I'm going to choose to think differently. We can roll our shoulders back and feel our feet on the ground and not puff up or shrink when we come up against something challenging. And the third one is finding a practitioner that knows how to work with stress physiology, who's trained with Kathy Kane, Stephen Terrell, or Peter Levine. So I hope this video was helpful for you, and I'm so glad you're here. If this resonates with you, please leave a comment below, and if you have any further questions, also hit me up in the comments below. I always read them and try to answer them in the videos here on my channel. So thank you so much for being here, and I will see you very soon.